Imagine walking into a crowded bar filled with hundreds of people, and then simply disappearing. No one remembers seeing you leave. Security cameras capture you walking inside, but not a single camera records you coming back out. Your phone goes silent. You miss your flight. You never contact your family again. Nearly 20 years later, investigators still can't explain what happened that night. This is the baffling disappearance of Brian Shaffer, one of America's most enduring unsolved mysteries. March 31st, 2006, downtown Columbus, Ohio. The city was alive with music, crowded sidewalks, and students celebrating the start of spring break. For thousands of people, it was a night like any other. Among them was a 27-year-old medical student named Brian Shaffer. Brian was just months away from completing medical school, pursuing a career dedicated to helping others. Friends described him as intelligent, outgoing, and full of potential. That evening, he met up with friends to enjoy a night out before leaving for a vacation in Miami with his girlfriend. Nothing about the evening seemed unusual. The group made their way through the busy streets of downtown Columbus, eventually arriving at the South Campus Gateway Entertainment Complex. Their destination was the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a popular sports bar located on the second floor, known for its lively atmosphere and packed crowds on weekends. To everyone around him, it was simply another Friday night filled with laughter, conversation, and celebration. No one could have imagined they were witnessing the final confirmed hours of Brian Shaffer's known movements. Shortly after midnight, Brian and his friends reached the entrance to the bar. Security cameras recorded him entering the Ugly Tuna Saloona. Inside, he spent time talking with friends, enjoying the crowded atmosphere, and later speaking briefly with other patrons. At that moment, there was nothing to suggest that history was quietly unfolding. From this point forward, much of what investigators know comes from surveillance footage, witness accounts, and carefully reconstructed timelines. What began as an ordinary night out was about to become one of the most enduring, unsolved mysteries in modern America. Security cameras captured Brian Shaffer entering the Ugly Tuna Saloona shortly after midnight. It would become the last confirmed recording of him entering the bar that night. Inside, the sports bar was crowded with students and late-night patrons enjoying the start of the weekend. Friends later described Brian as relaxed, smiling, and in good spirits. By every account, the evening seemed completely ordinary. As the night went on, Brian moved through the crowded bar, just as countless other patrons did. Investigators would later rely on witness accounts to help reconstruct these final documented moments. Several witnesses later recalled seeing Brian near the entrance, speaking briefly with two women. By all accounts, the interaction appeared friendly and completely routine. No one present had any reason to believe they were witnessing one of the final confirmed moments before Brian disappeared. This is the last point in the timeline where Brian's presence can be confidently placed through the available evidence. After this moment, the trail begins to disappear. No verified surveillance footage has ever shown Brian leaving the Ugly Tuna Saloona. As the night came to an end, Brian's friends left the bar, believing he had either remained inside or made his own way home. At the time, there was no reason to think anything was wrong. It wouldn't be until later that investigators began asking a simple but haunting question. Where was Brian Shaffer? Investigators retraced Brian's final known movements using surveillance footage, witness statements, and the layout of the building. Piece by piece, they reconstructed the night. Investigators carefully reviewed the available surveillance recordings and compared them with witness statements and the building's layout. Brian was clearly seen entering the bar, but despite extensive analysis, the available footage did not conclusively reveal what happened after his final confirmed sighting. Using surveillance footage, witness statements, and the building's layout, investigators reconstructed much of Brian's final known movements. His path into the bar could be established. What could not be established with certainty was how, or even if, he left the complex. That unanswered question would become the foundation of one of America's most enduring missing person investigations. As dawn broke over Columbus, March 31st had become April 1st. For most people, it was the beginning of an ordinary Saturday. But for Brian Shaffer's family and friends, it would become the day they realized something was terribly wrong. Later that day, Brian was expected to leave for a spring break trip to Miami with his girlfriend, Alexis Wagoner. But he never arrived. As calls went unanswered and the hours passed, what first seemed like an unusual delay began to feel like something far more serious. As the morning turned into the afternoon, Brian remained unreachable. At first, those closest to him hoped there was a simple explanation. Perhaps he had misplaced his phone. Perhaps he had stayed with a friend. But with every passing hour, concern grew. The silence was becoming impossible to ignore. For those who knew Brian best, his absence was deeply out of character. He had plans. People were expecting him. As the hours passed without any contact, concern gave way to a difficult realization. This was no longer simply a missed flight or a late night out. Something was wrong. Brian was officially reported missing. Investigators immediately began gathering information, interviewing those who had seen him the night before, and working to establish a clear timeline of his final known movements. What began as a search for a missing man would soon become one of the most perplexing disappearance cases in modern American history. Detectives retraced Brian's final known movements, speaking with witnesses and reviewing every available piece of evidence. They worked carefully to establish where he had been, who had seen him, and what could be confirmed. With each verified detail, the timeline became clearer. But beyond Brian's last confirmed sighting, investigators encountered the same unanswered question. What happened next? As the investigation continued, the search expanded far beyond law enforcement. Family members, friends, volunteers, and members of the Columbus community came together with a shared hope that someone, somewhere, had seen Brian. Missing person flyers appeared across neighborhoods, businesses, and the university district. Despite the growing search, no confirmed trace of Brian was found. As the days passed, Brian Shaffer's disappearance became known throughout Columbus and beyond. Investigators followed every credible lead, while the public responded with hope, concern, and an outpouring of support. But despite the growing search, the central question remained unchanged. How could someone enter a crowded bar and seemingly vanish? As the search continued, investigators turned their attention to every surveillance recording, every surveillance recording, and every confirmed detail was carefully examined. The goal was straightforward. The goal was straightforward: Brian Shaffer's final known movements as accurately as possible. But the deeper investigators looked, the more one unsettling fact became impossible to ignore. The evidence revealed where Brian had been, but not where he went. Investigators reviewed the available surveillance footage, comparing each recording with witness statements and the building's layout. Brian's arrival at the bar was clearly documented. But after his final confirmed sighting, the available recordings could not conclusively account for his movements. It was a gap in the timeline. It would become one of the defining challenges of the investigation. Friends, patrons, and employees who had been inside the bar that night each account added another piece to the timeline, helping detectives separate confirmed facts from uncertain memories. Many details aligned. Others could not be independently despite numerous interviews. No witness could explain what happened to Brian after his final confirmed Investigators returned to the entertainment complex, searching every area they believed could provide public spaces, surrounding grounds, and locations relevant to the investigation were were carefully examined. Each search was guided by the evidence, not by speculation. Yet despite those efforts, no physical evidence emerged that could explain what happened to Brian after his last confirmed Investigators also studied the layout of the South Campus Gateway complex in remarkable detail. Like many multi-level commercial buildings, it contained public spaces alongside operational areas used by staff and deliveries. The question was not whether these areas existed, but whether any of them could help explain the gap in Brian's documented movements. Despite extensive examination, investigators found no conclusive evidence establishing the route he took after his final confirmed sighting. With no conclusive physical evidence and an incomplete timeline, investigators faced a series of difficult questions. Could Brian have left the building without drawing attention? Did witness memories overlook a crucial moment? Or was there another explanation the available evidence simply could not reveal? Investigators approached each possibility carefully, testing every lead against the facts they could verify, while recognizing that some questions remained unanswered. The investigation had uncovered every confirmed piece of Brian's final known journey. What remained was the unanswered space beyond it. A mystery that, even today, continues to challenge investigators, journalists, and everyone who has followed the case. In the next phase of the investigation, detectives began examining every plausible explanation, carefully weighing each possibility against the evidence. Some theories appeared reasonable at first. Others quickly fell apart under closer scrutiny. But one by one, each would be tested in the search for the truth.
Another question soon became the focus of the investigation. Could Brian have left the building without being recognized or conclusively documented by the available surveillance footage? Investigators carefully compared video recordings, witness statements, and the building's layout. While this remained a possibility, the available evidence could neither confirm nor rule it out with certainty. The unanswered gap in Brian's timeline remained exactly that, a gap. Another possibility investigators explored was whether Brian left the area voluntarily with someone he had met that night. Witnesses recalled seeing him speaking briefly with other patrons during the evening, including a conversation near the entrance shortly before his final confirmed sighting. Investigators carefully examined those accounts, searching for any evidence that could identify a companion or explain where Brian went next. But despite extensive interviews and follow-up, no conclusive evidence established that Brian left the complex with another person. Like so many aspects of the case, the possibility remained investigated, but unproven. From the earliest days of the investigation, detectives also considered the possibility of foul play. Searches were conducted, evidence was documented, and every credible lead was examined for signs that Brian had been the victim of a violent crime. But despite those efforts, investigators did not uncover conclusive physical evidence establishing that foul play had occurred. That absence of evidence did not eliminate the possibility. It simply meant that investigators could not confirm it. As the months passed, the case remained suspended between possibilities, each one investigated, yet none supported by enough evidence to provide a definitive answer. Another possibility investigators considered was whether Brian experienced an accident or medical emergency after his final confirmed sighting. Search efforts extended beyond the bar itself, examining nearby public spaces and other locations thought to be relevant to the investigation. Detectives looked for any evidence that could support this explanation. But despite those searches, no conclusive evidence was found to indicate that Brian had suffered an accident in the areas examined. Without evidence to confirm or eliminate the possibility, it remained one of several theories that investigators could neither prove nor dismiss. Among the many theories discussed over the years was the idea that Brian never left the building at all. Investigators examined the complex carefully, reviewing its layout, operational areas, and locations that could be relevant to the investigation. Those searches reflected the investigators' commitment to exploring every reasonable possibility. But despite extensive examination, no evidence was found establishing that Brian remained inside the building after the bar closed. The theory persisted in public discussion, yet it remained unsupported by conclusive evidence. Like so many questions in this case, it was a possibility that could be considered, but not confirmed. Investigators explored every reasonable possibility supported by the evidence. They examined surveillance footage, interviewed witnesses, searched the building and surrounding areas, and followed countless leads. Some theories appeared plausible, others faded under closer examination. None could be proven with the evidence available. Years later, the facts remain remarkably few. Brian Shaffer entered the Ugly Tuna Saloona on the night of March 31st, 2006. After his final confirmed sighting, his movements could no longer be conclusively documented. Everything beyond that point remains unanswered. For investigators, for his family, and for everyone still searching for the truth, the mystery endures.
For investigators, the case became an unsolved mystery. For Brian's loved ones, it became something far more personal. Every unanswered phone call, every holiday, every birthday became another reminder that the waiting had never truly ended. When someone disappears without explanation, hope and uncertainty often exist side by side. And for those left behind, the search is never measured only in miles, but in years. For Brian's friends, the memories of that night never truly faded. An evening that began like countless others became the last time they would see him. Over the years, those final conversations and ordinary moments have been revisited again and again. Not because they hold the answers, but because they were the last pieces of a story that was never finished. For the investigators assigned to Brian's case, the work did not end when the headlines faded. Every new lead was reviewed, every credible tip was examined, every opportunity to uncover new evidence was carefully considered. Cases like this leave behind more than unanswered questions. They become a lasting reminder that even the most determined investigation cannot always overcome the absence of evidence. For those who searched for Brian, the hope of finding answers never disappeared. As the years passed, Brian Shaffer's disappearance never faded from public memory. Journalists continued to revisit the case. Investigators remained open to new information, and countless people searched for answers that had never been found. Each new generation discovered the same unanswered question that had puzzled investigators from the very beginning. Not because the mystery became more complicated, but because the evidence never revealed what happened next. For nearly 2 decades, Brian's story has remained a reminder that some mysteries endure, not for lack of effort, but for lack of answers. Before he became the subject of headlines and documentaries, Brian Shaffer was simply a young man building a future. He was studying medicine, pursuing a career dedicated to helping others, and looking ahead to the life he hoped to create. Those who knew him remembered his intelligence, his sense of humor, and the ambitions that reached far beyond one spring night in Columbus. That is how he deserves to be remembered. Not only for the mystery that followed, but for the life that came before it. Nearly 2 decades have passed since Brian Shaffer walked into the Ugly Tuna Saloona. The investigation uncovered many facts, explored countless leads, and examined every reasonable possibility it could. Yet the most important question remains unanswered. What happened to Brian Shaffer? Until that answer is found, his story remains unfinished. And for those who continue to hope, to search, and to remember, the final chapter has not yet been written. Thank you for watching. If you have any information related to Brian Shaffer's disappearance, no matter how small it may seem, contact the appropriate law enforcement agency. Even the smallest detail could help move the investigation forward. If you appreciate respectful, evidence-based true crime documentaries that honor victims and separate verified facts from speculation, consider subscribing for more stories that deserve to be remembered. Because every unsolved case is more than a mystery. It's someone's son, someone's brother, someone's friend. And until the truth is known, they should never be forgotten.